is in. Jess, if you can hear me, the acknowledgement form is online now. And I will go over that in the first few minutes here. And you can just take down the URL and send it to your peeps. Okay. Okay, kiddos, it's 2 o'clock on the dot. Lori, shall we get going? Yeah. Thank you very much. There are 37 of you who are on time, and I'm just very, very grateful. Thank you. We are starting on time today. We have a lot to get through before we get to the training, which is really, we just have a lot to do today. So I'm going to jump right into sharing my screen with you, and we're going to get going. So let's see, Lori, can you see this, the screen share okay? No. Is that it? You can?
Yeah.
All right, great. It's time for Drug Education 101, peeps. And let's go through our housekeeping items real quick. Again, mute your microphones, please, but make sure your cameras are on. It's important to keep your camera on. For us, please. If you don't have a camera, obviously, then you don't have a camera. But okay, so this is our trial run with our new training acknowledgement. Instead of me emailing out a PDF to each of you, you're filling it out and emailing it back. You're going to take this acknowledgement by going to this link, which I did email to you earlier, but this is a case-sensitive link. Okay, so it's due by the end of the day tomorrow, but just get it done right at the end of training. It should take you less than 5 minutes, should be super fast. And this new way of taking acknowledgements should hopefully be easier for you, easier for me, and just all around better, we're hoping. So this is a trial. Anybody have any questions about the acknowledgement? Everybody needs to make sure to do it. So take down that URL, and I'll try to send it again at the end, maybe at the end of training. So thank you, everybody. Christmas, as far as I understand it, Christmas was a huge success. Turn the time over to Lori to give you all a big thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, Margaret, Maddie, Cammie, development, because we were understaffed in the children's department, they kicked butt. And I know our kids had a great Christmas. So I'm very grateful for that. We always, our clients are always, and our clients are really grateful too. So they were appreciative of that. They were appreciative of the 12 days of Christmas. And the women's Christmas, they were appreciative too. So I appreciate all of everybody's help to get that done. It was a long December, but the parties went great considering everything we had to do to get everything going. And it was a great month. So we can't do it without everybody pitching in. So thanks again. And I'm glad the holidays are over.
Yeah, I mean, my first Christmas was last year, and I just could not believe how much House of Hope does for its clients at Christmas time. I'm floored at how hard worked and how it all comes together, and it's amazing. So great job, everybody. So really quickly, you need to find a fellow employees extension. I want to go through this with you really quick because it's hard for me to get out extension lists all the time, and it's really easy to find this information. So all you need to do is open from an HOH computer, from a House of Hope computer, or this should work on the House of Hope iPads too, I think. You open a brand new browser right here, and then from there, all you do is click the very first, and it should just come right up. The House of Hope landing page should be the first thing that comes up. This just needs to be a new browser. It can't be a browser that you've got open and you're opening a new tab. You need to close your browser and open a new browser. You go to House of Hope landing, then you click on either Salt Lake City staff contact right here, or Provo staff contact right here. So it's really, really as easy as that. You need to find their extensions. Extensions are here, and your fellow employees' cell phones numbers are here. Just one quick thing for Salt Lake City. To find the recovery assistance information, you need to just do one more click. Under recovery support, you click here to find the recovery assistance. Outside of that, it's all there. So that should be really easy to find your coworkers' extensions. And just quickly, it's very confidential, this information. So it is not to be shared with anybody outside of House of Hope. So I just wanted to go over that. And also I do have a couple of printed cheat sheets still. If you need a cheat sheet this is for Salt Lake City staff. If you need a cheat sheet with phone numbers and extensions on it, I do have a couple left. So let me know and I can give you one. It's really pretty up to date, this one. Okay, moving on. Important upcoming events. January 16th, we got holiday schedule hours for the residential and day treatment, as the office will be closed for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. February 13th, next all staff. February 20th is President's Day, again, holiday hours. Just you can see here next a few all staffs. It's important to note that April is licensing time, as you know, that is a very, very critical time for everybody, but mostly Lori and Julie and I and well, a lot of us. So just licensing is already coming up again. And then we want to mention, Lori, do you want to say anything about the Legacy Luncheon?
Yeah, the Legacy Luncheon will be celebrating our 70th year. We have not had it since 2018 because of COVID. It's going to be a big year. I think we'll have a big turnout. So mark your calendars. It usually starts around 10 in the morning. It will be over at the Masonic Temple again. And then we usually go a couple hours. We do a continental breakfast, lunch. It's an amazing thing. Speakers, choir, celebrating a lot of stuff. It's probably one of our most amazing events we do here at House of Hope, and we've done for a lot of years. So mark your calendars. Plan vacations around it.
Awesome. So just so I'm clear, all staff are expected to attend, right, Lori?
I mean, I encourage everyone to attend, but part-time staff, sometimes it's hard for them with other jobs with the RAs. But yeah, all daytime staff for sure. It's something, if you can be there, you want to be there. I mean, it's very rejuvenating to see how our work pays off. And if you're a day staff, yes, you're expected to attend.
Great.
So I expect the office closed and everybody over there, including Hope Center.
Great, thanks. Okay, moving on. It's time to introduce new staff. Jessica, do you want to introduce your two new staff that you've got since the last meeting?
Okay, so we have two new RAs. So Anna is one of our grave staff, so she's been helping out with that, take some pressure off of our other grave. And so she's been really great, jumping right in and getting right into the groove of things. And then Jessie Cox is another recovery assistant. She's newer. She's almost been through her first 8 shifts and starting ready to start working shifts on her own. So we're really excited to have them and look forward to many more.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. Welcome, Anna and Jessie, to House of Hope. We're so glad to have you. And we've had a great couple of weeks in Salt Lake City hiring. We have hired some really incredible new staff. It's been really rejuvenating for me and really exciting to find such amazing people. Welcome, Hallie, to the Hope Center, and she's our child development specialist there. And I believe she's working with the preschoolers at the Hope Center. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. Hallie, if you're on, welcome. We're so grateful to have you. And Mara is our new residential support coordinator at Salt Lake City office. Mara is Powers. She's Mara Powers. She's so great. Just to give you a little background about what the residential support coordinator is, it is the position that Heather McCall had for a couple of years. That's Mara. She has taken over that position, and we could not be more grateful. I've never seen Lori as excited as she was the other day with her staff finally getting filled up here. Jerry is also a new Hope Center employee. Jerry is a part-time child development specialist over at Hope Center Salt Lake. Welcome, Jerry Ewing. I really enjoyed meeting you at your new hire orientation and want to welcome you. And going on, we have a new group specialist on Erica's team for our outpatient groups. Jennifer Argyle, welcome Jennifer, recent graduate of Weber, and we're so grateful to have you. I know Erica was very excited when she found you. So, and Allie is a brand new recovery assistant, and she is awesome. She just started a week ago. She already has been diving in and learning the ropes, and we want to welcome you to our team, Allie. It's so great to have you. And lastly, we have Ivy. Ivy is our new operations assistant. She works directly with Lori and works with a lot with Mara. So she works with client services here in Salt Lake. She is basically over facilities. So she'll be at the houses quite a bit, and all the other facilities all the other, like our storage units and that sort of thing. Ivy is hilarious. She is from Georgia. I think I could tell you that. She comes to Utah from Georgia. And we are really grateful that she is here. That's when Lori was so excited. I saw her with the biggest smile down the hallway. So welcome new staff. So glad to have you. Seriously, it's been a great couple of weeks for the HR guy. He has been very encouraged by these great new people. Okay, hoodie ceremony time. I turn it over to Lisa or Lori to do our hoodie ceremony.
All right. Marion, you got the gong ready?
I do have it ready.
Okay. Kurt, I need the words.
You need the poem? Okay, this is for Sandy, Raquel, and Pamela. This is for you.
Okay. Ready.
Raquel,
After every paragraph, Marion,
I know.
you've
I got
changed, grown, you're looking older. You seem much wiser, healthier, bolder. You've been at House of Hope a year, but it seems like you've always been here. So we honor you the best way we could with the one and only House of Hope hood.
Oh, whoops. I hit it so hard I knocked it down.
All right, next paragraph. Once you've worked here, you will find something has changed in your heart and mind. It wasn't easy. You've cursed and cried, but you've made it through. You endured and thrived. You made mistakes, which you had to repair. You had to learn to trust the process here. You've had the help of your trusty team. Now a year has passed, just like a dream. Oh my God. That sounded like a foghorn. Now, as you go forward in the life you choose, there's something you will never lose. It's the laughs, it's the tears, it's the client's face. When she finds her truth, nothing can replace that feeling that there is something greater than you, a spirit of hope, a long-term view.
Is that better?
No. Now you may move on in a year or two, but House of Hope will never leave you. No, you won't forget, for you are stronger, and we hope you'll be with us much longer. But a part of you will always be here where you worked and grew for the whole last year. Now say what you've learned and make it sound wise. Per ardua surgo, through adversity we rise. Oh,
That was good.
that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Thanks for all y'all hanging out with us this last year.
Raquel and Sandy and Pamela, congrats. Talk to Margaret and get your hood. Okay. Moving on. It's time for staff of the month. Who wants to go first? Provo. Provo.
Okay, so I'm reading it. So this person was nominated by Bo, who was staff of the month way back in November, I want to say. Okay, so this she nominated one of our child development specialists from our Hope Center, Megan Ferguson, for going the extra mile and handling a challenging time with exceptional commitment and skill. Bo said, Megan has been through a rocky road at the house in Hope Center. I'm glad she didn't give up on HOH. Yay. She is hardworking, goes above and beyond for the little clients in the Hope Center. Every kid loves her, including us too. She definitely deserves to be staff of the month.
Congratulations. Nicely done.
Thank you. That was so kind.
Congrats, Megan. That's really great. Okay. Who's got the Salt Lake City one?
Allison, are you on here?
I am, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the person that I'm nominating for staff of the month for Salt Lake is someone who I think like often is more in the background, but who works their butt off regardless of whether or not people notice that they are working that hard. It's somebody who cares a ton about the clients and is also supportive to staff as well. I feel like when I'm having a rough day, I trust that this person would be there for me. And the person that I'm nominating is Cammie.
Woo-hoo! Outstanding.
That was so nice of you and very unexpected. Thank you.
Well deserved, Miss Sandal. Well deserved. Congrats. Lori, do we have a manager's
We
stuff?
do. Yep.
Okay.
So this person that we nominated was someone that for me, I know I don't have to worry about things getting taken care of. They take care of stuff. They're on top of stuff. The client's needs are taken care of consistently, even the hard stuff, which I think sometimes people want to avoid that, having to put people on contracts all the time and all that. But I'm so grateful that that piece makes this department specifically handled in a that could be, I've seen it when it's not handled, so I know what it looks like when it's running really smoothly. And I believe her team would say that too. So we nominated Erica for staff of the month.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Erica. I mean, it's just, I'm so grateful that I don't have to worry about stuff. So very, very grateful.
Yeah. Wow. Well deserved all around. Megan and Cammie and Erica, congratulations. Really, really well deserved. I'm so grateful to be able to work with you. Sorry I'm pressing on so quickly. We just have so much to do. Lori, do you want to just quickly mention Culture Corner?
Yeah, a lot going on. Martin Luther King Day is on Monday. So we'll be doing some honoring Human Rights Day as well with that. And then February is Black History Month. And I know there's a lot of stuff coming up. So watch your emails, watch Teams and stuff as we look at different ways to support. all that stuff. I think we'll get back on track now that holidays are over. Our team will start meeting more for the diversity team to make sure we can have some more fun things going on. And I know Women's History Month is coming up. There's a lot of stuff coming up, so we'll be working on it. I know that the National Day calendars too, we got for all the houses and upstairs and downstairs. So if y'all see stuff and have ideas, we're always welcome. Well, we're open to ideas.
Thanks. Okay, it's all yours. Oh, let me just quick say, because you're muted still, Lori. If you just joined us or you're late, make sure that you catch the business agenda items in the recording, and make sure that you get down the link for the acknowledgement at the end of the training that you need to fill out and send back. Thank you.
Okay, so drug education, we haven't done it for a while, I realized after looking over the training schedule. So much stuff to cover. There's no way we can cover it all in one session. So I actually split them up into drug education 1 and 2. So we'll probably do one this month, and then we'll have to do behavior management next month for licensing, and then we'll carry on probably the next month, depending on what we have to get ready. But we'll focus on top drugs right now, which are alcohol, cocaine, heroin, opiates, meth, and then definitely fentanyl, because that's such a big thing to talk about right now. And because of all of the deaths that are coming, so Rick's going to cover that. So the other stuff we'll cover in drug education next month. And then the other thing that's not on here that's came up in the last year that I'll add are kind of all the, I'm not going to say the word right, America might have to jump in, but the psychedelic, there it is, the psychedelic meds that they're starting to look at for treatment as well. So we'll add some treatment, we'll add some stuff in on that. Next slide. Margaret.
Hello. So this slide is just showing the primary drug of choice for our clients last fiscal year. I just did the primary drug. We do track secondary and tertiary, but for the most part, I just did primary for this training. As you can see, we have had a spike in alcohol. Last year, alcohol wasn't even double digits for the primary drug. So that's kind of the big change, was there was a spike in alcohol. Methamphetamines has stayed pretty steady. Heroin stayed pretty steady. Like Lori said, next year, starting July 1st, we will be tracking fentanyl in and of itself as its own category. As well as the psychedelic, other fun stuff. I shouldn't say fun, but it is fun to track it. It's fun to put it in. It's fun to know what is out there and what's being used the most. Unfortunately, we have jobs because of the situation. In a perfect world, what we do would be obsolete, correct? But it's not a perfect world. So if you have any questions, methamphetamine seems to be still the very high drug of choice for the families that we serve, the women that we serve. That hasn't always been. So it's kind of interesting to compare it to past years. For example, heroin was a lot higher in 2017 than it is now. So things just kind of change in the environment. I've also noticed with Provo has more of the prescription drugs falling in to be a lot higher. But overall, with all of us combined, this was what the primary drug of choice came up with. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. I want to do a huge thank you to staff that track this data, the admissions department for both Salt Lake and Provo. Thank you so much for tracking all of this, writing it down, getting entered in. It really makes my life so much easier. So I really, really appreciate it, because this data really is important moving forward. It's important moving forward for so many reasons. But from a development standpoint, it's really important for funding reasons. So thank you again to everyone for all you do to keep the wheel running smoothly. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Margaret. Speaking of drugs, so this is the drug wheel. I'm going to show you a little video on it, so I might have you stop screen share in a minute, Kurt. But you'll see how everything is categorized from the inner circle to the outer circle, where they put depressants versus opioids, cannabinoids, cannabinoids, I never say it right, then pathogens and the psychedelics and stimulants. And there's no way to have so many meds. There's so much stuff out there synthetically right now. And so that makes it really hard to track a lot of this stuff. If you want to stop screen share, Kurt, I hope I can pull it up.
Hello and welcome to the introduction to the drugs wheel presentation. It will give a brief overview of methods of drug classification and explore how a new wave of psychoactive substances led to the development of the drugs wheel model. Nature provided us with a wide range of mind-altering psychoactive plants and fungi, which can be classified based on their effects. Sedatives, such as opium, stimulants, such as coca, and hallucinogens, such as psilocybin mushrooms. Cannabis at this stage was a sedative drug. However, it has become stronger over the years, which has led to it having other non-sedative effects. As the 20th century progressed, the pharmaceutical industry developed. More drugs came onto the market, and by the latter part of the 20th century, the DASH model of classification appeared. DASH stands for depressant, analgesic, stimulant, and hallucinogenic. And it split the previous sedative group into the two subsections of depressants, to include newer barbiturate drugs, and analgesics, painkilling or opioid drugs. For the most part, drugs fit into a category. However, drug effects are very complex, and there were inevitably some discrepancies. Cannabis, as already mentioned, became stronger over the years. THC content has risen, and the ratio of THC to CBD within cannabis plants has changed. It began to have some stimulant effects, such as racing heartbeat, and also more hallucinogenic qualities. Ketamine was also hard to categorize as it fit into various groups. It increases heart rate, yet it is a central nervous system depressant and can lead to unconsciousness. It is a potent painkiller and also causes significant hallucinations. Many drug workers and trainers began to use the other box for drugs that were hard to place. As the wave of new psychoactive substances began to appear on the market, this other box became the receptacle for a range of new compounds, such as the synthetic cannabinoid receptor agonists, MDAI, an interesting compound that will be discussed further, aryl cyclohexylamines, such as methotrexamine or MXE, and PCP derivatives, such as 3-MeO-PCP. By 2012, the other box was becoming overfilled, and a group of professionals working in the UK drugs field called DrugWatch drew up a new model of classification called the drugs wheel. The drugs wheel added 3 new categories to the DASH model. Cannabinoids, to include cannabis and the raft of synthetic cannabinoids receptor agonists, which had effects that were specific to this new group of compounds. Dissociatives, to include ketamine, the arocyclohexylamines, and PCP and its derivatives. The empathogen category, which includes those drugs that primarily affect serotonin levels. This category has in many ways been the most contentious. As many empathogenic drugs have also got stimulant qualities, the need for a separate category for these drugs has been questioned. There were, however, 2 main reasons for the creation of this category. Firstly, users of the drug MDAI reported symptoms of increased levels of serotonin, for example, dilated pupils, hot and cold flushes, but without any signs of stimulant activity. Without an empathogen group, there was nowhere that MDAI could fit within the model. Secondly, concerns were raised around serotonin syndrome caused by MDAI and other serotonergic drugs, and it was felt that discussions around serotonin levels were therefore important for harm reduction advice and information. So to future-proof the model, the empathogen group was integrated into the drugs wheel. It must be noted that drug effects are complex, however, and many drugs can fit into various categories depending on a number of factors. The drugs wheel is not intended to be a definitive source of information. Rather, it is designed as an all-inclusive model, meaning that all currently known psychoactive drugs fit into a category. The wheel is updated regularly, and over 25 incremental updates have been released since 2012. In this version, the outer ring lists drugs that are controlled by UK legislation, the Misuse of Drugs Act and Medicines Act, while the inner ring lists legal drugs as of April 2016. The inner and outer rings of the wheel allow for drugs to be split into subcategories. For example, legal status, prescribed or non-prescribed, or when working with clients, you could ask them to place drugs according to which they think are lower or higher risk. Drug workers have reported that using the drugs wheel model simplifies the very complex drug landscape. Rather than having to learn details of all of the 550 plus compounds known to the European Monitoring Centre, drug information and harm reduction information can instead be given by category. This graphic gives a rough overview of some of the typical effects that might be associated with different categories. A high-resolution PDF of this image, along with many others, are available on thedrugswheel.com. The drugs wheel is licensed under Creative Commons, meaning that people are allowed to adapt, remix, and build upon this piece of work non-commercially, as long as appropriate credit is given and that any amended work remains under a Creative Commons license. The idea behind this was to ensure that everyone has free access to the drugs wheel and that individuals or agencies can adapt it to meet their specific needs. For example, an addiction agency in Paris recently developed a French version, and shown here is the effects wheel. You're encouraged to make use of the model as you see fit. If you would like to collaborate.
There's so much, one of the things I think about when I look at that wheel, there's so much stuff on there and things are so much evolving over the years, even the last 5 years with synthetics. You know, you think about Spice and Kratom and all the other things that are coming online, and bath salts, of course. And then we look at what people do to change the components of it. It becomes more and more complex to understand drugs and what they do and what our clients are doing, using drugs before coming to treatment, during treatment, and then after treatment as well. Okay, back to screen share, Kurt. You're up, Erica.
Okay. I one time had somebody ask me what were 3 of the things I've learned the most from working at a substance abuse treatment center, which I had to think about for a minute. But one of the things I told them was I didn't realize how dangerous alcohol was till I started learning more about it and researching more and seeing more of what the clients were kind of experiencing when using alcohol. And so alcohol to me, I find to be one of the most dangerous drugs that people use. And it's, Margaret, that chart was really interesting because seeing how the alcohol numbers increased, because I was going to say, as we do like the UAs for the day treatment clients, a lot of clients have alcohol as one of their diagnoses. Probably not their primary, like you said, but it is pretty common amongst most of the clients these days. And so I just find that to be really interesting for those of you who don't track the UAs in day treatment like I do. But if you look at this first page, it kind of goes over the alcohol by volume. So you look like 12 ounces is 5% in beer, 7% in malt liquor with the 8 ounces. So kind of it just shows you the percentage, right, of the alcohol in the volume of drinks. So you guys can kind of look at that chart. But I just have learned a lot of things. So one of the things I was researching too, when I told Lori that I would talk to you guys about alcohol, is kind of some ways that alcohol can damage the brain. And so these are like 6 facts that I learned. So one of them is it shrinks the brain. So people who drink every day have smaller brains than non-drinkers, which I think is really interesting. And so it affects how you think, feel, act, and interact with others, the smaller your brain. And so it says the size of your brain really does matter. And so I thought that was interesting. It reduces blood flow to the brain. So brain uses 20% of your body's blood flow. So by drinking alcohol, it's reducing that blood flow. It shrivels the memory centers. So it says drinking just 1 to 2 glasses of wine a day leads to atrophy in the hippocampus. It reduces the number of new brain cells, and it increases the risk of dementia, which probably goes along with the memory centers, right? And then it prematurely ages the brain. And so those are just, that's if somebody drinks every day, and it doesn't say how much you have to drink every day, but even just putting alcohol in your body every day can have those effects, which I think is really interesting. So can you go to the next slide, please? So like I said, because beer, wine, and liquor are so widely available, it really is looked at as almost its own separate category. When I do an intake with a client, I'll say, what are the drugs you've used? They'll say maybe meth or heroin. And I'll say, oh, do you drink? Oh yeah, well, there's alcohol too. I used to drink all the time, but they tend to like classify it different. And I would say in an intake that probably happens 9 times out of 10. Like that's very common. And so I think that's kind of how a lot of people view it too, right? Or you'll have family members of clients, they'll go home and they'll drink in front of them and they don't think it's a big deal because it's not like using heroin. And so it's definitely not thought of as a drug the same way that the other substances are thought of. And sometimes too, we'll see clients come in here who are like, well, I don't really have a problem like they do because I drink and I don't use heroin or whatever it might be. So definitely classified as something very different. Society kind of views it differently. So being a heavy drinker, like this says, is kind of a more forgiving view than using something else. It's more socially acceptable. You do it at holidays versus using heroin at your dining room table, right? You'll drink as a social family gathering. And so I think it can become a really tricky diagnosis to treat because of the view it has as seen as so separate in substance use. So even though it's legal, it is one of, I think, one of the most dangerous drugs, especially because it is classified as a central nervous depressant. When you look at like side effects that it has when pregnant women are drinking versus using heroin or meth, like you'll see that there's fetal alcohol syndrome, right? Because granted, not everyone using heroin is going to come forth and do a study the same way, but alcohol, it like breaks through the placenta to the baby. So it actually affects the baby in that way. And then the baby doesn't have the kidneys developed to be able to filter it the same way. And so I think it drastically, you see more effects on alcohol in pregnancy as well. It's one of the most used drugs. It plays a large role in many societies and cultures. It impacts public health. People over the age of 12 have used alcohol. So, it's also very common amongst younger people to drink at parties or just do whatever. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism led the National Institute of Health institutes supporting conducting research on the impact of alcohol. And so there's a website you guys can visit if you want that kind of gives you more information about that. But, and then also is people will use alcohol while using other drugs. And so and alcohol is a depressant, right? So it just adds to that depressant layer. So there's a few articles, or a few websites too, that can be helpful if you guys look on the CDC. But okay, next slide, please. And then, so alcohol is an inhibition, like it lowers your inhibitions, right? So sometimes clients will say to us, well, I can still drink when I'm in recovery, which that can be a hot button discussion. Some people believe you can, some people believe you can't, but always focusing on the clients like, well, when you reduce your inhibitions, where does that lead you further down the road? And so remembering that it can be relaxing. And then usually it's used if clients begin to engage in drinking again outside of when they're done with treatment, they usually end up using their drug of choice again because it lowers those inhibitions and makes it easier for them to go back into that. So we have a lot of discussions, especially in day treatment, about that and what that looks like for them, because that becomes a discussion where a lot of people say, well, I can still do this and stay sober. And so we discuss that a lot in day treatment, but in moderate doses, even over long periods of time, it continues to relax, sedate, and lower inhibitions. In larger doses, a drinker can be killed by acute alcohol poisoning. Like I said, super scary detoxing. A client whose main drug of choice is alcohol, they're going to want to detox more likely in a hospital where they can be safely monitored. And then it says, although a person usually passes out before drinking enough to die. So it's definitely affects your body so differently. Taken regularly in large doses over time, it can result in grave physical, psychological, and social problems, which can lead to addiction. So next slide. And then this video that Lori found pretty funny. And so we just wanted to show this to you guys.
Yeah, I have to have some videos after reading tough stuff. So You want to stop, I couldn't get it. Thanks, Kurt.
That's one of my favorite clips ever.
Okay, next slide, Kurt. Let's do cocaine. Let's talk about cocaine. Go back one, will you? These are different ways that cocaine can look. You'll see the rock cocaine up there too as well. Okay, next slide. You saw on the thing that Margaret, we don't, on the statistics, you don't see as much cocaine here as you do meth and other things. It's pricier. I do think back east, we tend to see different statistics, especially with crack cocaine. Still pretty addictive, coming from the coca plant, and you'll see it'll come in a crystal. It can also be in a crack cocaine, which people call crack, and they tend to smoke it. Cocaine is primarily done through snorting. A lot of people will sometimes snort it and then rub it on their gums. We see people inject. We used to see a lot, and this was years ago, we used to see a lot of cocaine and heroin use where they would do it together. But because I think of pricing, they started using meth and heroin together a lot. Cocaine and heroin would be called speed balls. I think meth and heroin are called goof balls when they combine both of them. So a lot of times they'll dissolve the powder, inject it in the bloodstream. So that's why whenever we see things like foil and spoons or any kind of a rigs, we're worried about those kinds of things in the houses as well. Free-base cocaine is a lot of things that we did with crack. Like I said, we just don't see that as much as just in the West Coast, but it's still a big East Coast thing. And binging. The thing is about the cocaine, if you want to go to the next slide, is it has a really short window of getting high. And because of the short window, people tend to use it over and over. If you ever watch a lot of those old 80s videos, you'll see people using cocaine a lot in a short period of time. Happy, energetic, a lot of mental alertness, but then also paranoia can happen a lot. And then sometimes people will use coke because they think it can help their mental abilities, getting a lot done in a short amount of time. But like I said, it disappears within a few minutes to an hour, and it depends on how much people are using, how much they're snorting, are they smoking, are they injecting? But I really just don't hear cocaine a lot. Erica could probably jump on that as well on work, and Ashley and Peter, but we just don't see it often. And the percentage is really, really low.
Yeah, we had one client use it like maybe a year ago, but it's very rare.
Yeah, really rare. I think it's too expensive. It prevents dopamine from being recycled. And so you build this space up between the two nerve cells, and it really stops a lot of normal communication. And then because the dopamine floods the brain receptacles, what happens is it takes time to reset. And so reward circuits tend to adapt, which is what happens with every drug. And maybe we'll do some education on that, showing the synapsing with the neurons and stuff in our next training on drug education too. Next slide. Okay, heroin, smack, black, a lot of things, people call it a lot of different names. If you go to the DEA website, you'll see so many names. They have a whole list of like other names you can call drugs, that stuff I'd never even heard of but the DEA ups its rates consistently. So heroin, injected, smoked, injection happens a lot, but I've seen a lot of smoking. I know maybe 10 years ago we used to see injection mostly, and now we've seen it switch from just injecting to a lot of smoking. Next slide. Opioid drug comes from morphine, natural substance that comes from the opium plants in Southwest Asia, Mexico, Colombia. So sniffing, injecting, snorting, smoking, and people mix with crack cocaine. But probably an update I should add to this is mixing with meth, because that's happened a lot more. It binds to the opioid receptors, and those feelings of pain and pleasure tend to happen. People use heroin and they tend to what we call nod out. And so they're sleeping a lot. It's why we have Narcan all over this place. It's why we give naloxone. Narcan's the brand, and Narcan that we give everyone when they leave treatment as well. Most of the time, I hand Narcan out when people are leaving, I say, do you know how to use Narcan? And we talk about it, and almost every client has said, yeah. So that tells me they know a lot about what's going on with opioid use in the last several years as it's spiked. Next slide. Prescriptions. Now this is my opinion, personally, just because I've worked in treatment for a lot of years. I think back in the 2000s, I started worrying about all the prescriptions that were going on. And one of the things I thought is, I wonder if heroin's going to spike, because back then it was more meth. And what happened is prescriptions ran out, right? And we started seeing the opioid epidemic coming into play, and heroin use spiked. Because of what happens when you can't get prescriptions anymore, you still need your high, you're going to have to go to the street to get it. And so we saw a lot of people with writing fraudulent prescriptions, and then that technology changed a lot of that. And then a lot of people went to heroin use. So the Oxycontin, the Vicodin, all those kind of things created a huge opioid epidemic. The next thing that we'll be talking about, we're going to talk about the next epidemic that's been huge has been fentanyl. Because as I personally think, as we start to get some kind of handle on understanding things, people get smarter about switching how drugs work, right? Same thing that will happen with kratom, that's happened with spice, with salts, all those things. It's just finding a better way to not have to feel. And it's just, I don't want to say blame doctors or anything, but prescription writing led to a huge epidemic. There's no doubt about it. Overprescribing, you can get addicted within 7 days just from opioids. And so being really cautious of that is a big deal, and something we have to talk a lot about with our clients, especially if anybody's having surgery. Next slide. Short-term effects, that rush of pleasure. But they still have a lot of dry mouth. Most clients have told me their first use of heroin, they threw up. And my thought was, well, why'd you keep you? I don't like throwing up. Why do you keep using? But the feeling after that, they love. Rourke and I were talking about, we probably in the last 90 days have had more clients on medicated assisted treatment, which is methadone and Suboxone, than our whole time here. I'm staffing all those clients once a month, and I think we have 20, 25. So we've had a huge increase in medicated assisted treatment. And I'm a full believer in that, because I'd rather have them on methadone or Suboxone than shooting heroin outside in the street. That nod I talk about, you'll see people with nodding off. You'll see a lot of clouded mental functioning. And the other long-term effects we look at are HIV and hepatitis, huge spikes in hepatitis over the years as well, because people struggle with sharing needles. The one thing I really love about the harm reduction programs and some of those places is they'll do needle exchange. And I know there's a whole lot of ethical dilemmas around that, but I'd rather have people use them. If they're going to use, at least people are using clean needles and being a lot safer than sharing needles, because that's the #1 way of spreading all this pathogens and the bloodborne stuff. Next slide. Long-term effects, insomnia. I will tell you, as far as abscesses, we see a lot of people come in with abscesses where they continue to inject. I had a client probably my first year working in pre-treatment forever ago, but she came in and had all these things. It almost looked like she'd take knives and went down her arm and all down her arms and her legs. And I asked her what had happened. I thought she got in some kind of car accident or something, but she'd shot up so much in her veins, all her veins had pretty much exploded. We'll see people shoot up, they can't use veins anymore, they'll shoot up in their neck. I've seen people shoot up between their toes, shoot up in their stomach. So wherever people can catch a way to shoot up, we've seen that happen over the years. Constipation is a big thing. If you've ever taken opiates, constipation starts to happen. And so a lot of our clients are on meds to help with that, especially if they're on MET. And then we see a lot of depression because, your receptors are messed up when you're trying to repair as well. The other thing I think is a big deal that may not be in any of this is people's pain management tends to decrease substantially. Most of our clients have a really, really low threshold for pain. So something that I I deal with a lot of chronic pain, and something that I might think is a 2 or a 3, for them, it might be an 8 or a 9 from a 0 to 10. And so that's something we have to work on with our clients a lot, is pain management, because they haven't learned how to deal with physical pain. And that doesn't include the emotional pain as well. The irregular menstrual cycles is a big thing for women as well. Our clients sometimes have used for so long, they stop having their period. And so then suddenly their period comes back when they have some kind of structure and they're eating normally. And so then they have all this pain and they're at the hospital because their period's coming on and they don't know how to deal with that. So hospital stays tend to spike a lot with people that are in early treatment. Next slide. Any questions on heroin? I went through that quickly, but I want to make sure we spend some time on fentanyl. Hi, you're up, Burke.
Okay. Fentanyl's been in the news a lot lately because of some famous people that have died due to overdoses of fentanyl. Prince is probably the most recent one that everybody would know. His death was directly contributed to a fentanyl overdose. A couple of weeks ago, a young man was diagnosed as a fentanyl overdose. I didn't know who he was. He was a online social media person, but he was only 18. Reported on the news or on his websites that he was using the drug, found him dead at age 18 of a fentanyl overdose. So fentanyl is increasing, and we're worried a lot about it because it's a very powerful synthetic opioid. What that means is it's not an opiate based, meaning it doesn't come from a plant source. It's actually a man-made opiate that is 50 to 100 times more potent than any of the opiates on the market right now. Schedule II drug, which means it should only be prescribed and given by a medical person, licensed medical person. It works really well to reduce pain. It was created in the late 1960s and used very effectively to help people overcome extreme pain, but has since grown into, just like many other drugs, something that is illegal, easy to manufacture, easy to reproduce, and easy to add to almost any other drug. So next slide. Opiates are probably one of the most common used drugs. We saw the slide a little bit earlier. I was looking up some statistics. In the year 2021, I believe, just in California alone, there were over 69,000 deaths related to opiates and synthetic opiates, opiates that had fentanyl added to their drugs. It can be given as a shot. One of the most quick ways to do it is what people will put it on a patch, similar to a nicotine patch, so that it absorbs into the skin almost immediately. Someone I noticed posted that they look like Smarties or Sweet Tarts. And it's sad because these can be made in labs. Like I said, they're not plant-based. Similar to methamphetamines that can be produced out of someone's home, fentanyl can also be produced the same way. And it's being mixed into almost every drug that's out there. And that's what's scary for our clients right now is, and I tell them this all the time, there's no such thing as a pure drug anymore. You know, they go out on the streets and they think they're buying meth, or they think they're buying cocaine, or they're buying heroin. And there's a lot of manufacturers out there adding the fentanyl to it. Just 2 salt-sized grains of fentanyl is a lethal overdose for an adult. That's how powerful the drug is. And just personal note, this summer, one of my friends posted on our Facebook page that his 38-year-old son, who had been clean and sober for 10 months, he and a buddy decided to get some oxycodone to snort and didn't know it was laced with fentanyl, and it killed both of them. And so it's very lethal, it's very potent, and it works. That, you know, same effect as the opiates. You need to give that euphoric feel, that sleepy feel, that easygoing feel, and very likely to overdose even with one small dose. Next slide. Like morphine and other opiates, it hits those receptors that control pain, controls emotions. You know, a lot of our clients, they're heroin opiate users, don't like to feel anything medically pain-wise or mentally pain-wise. And so they'll take the opiates to feel happy, to numb out, to, you know, not have to deal with life. Many of our clients that we've noticed have come in still clearing from heroin and the opiates. Takes several weeks sometimes for them to get clear-minded, to be able to not be confused about what's going on, to not be hyper reactive to what's going on. But you know, some pretty bad side effects too: the nausea, the constipation, breathing problems. It's pretty lethal. Next slide. Yes, absolutely, you can overdose on fentanyl. And it's very, very easy to overdose on fentanyl. It affects the heart rate, it affects the breathing, which can slow or stop. With your oxygen not reaching the brain, it can very easily turn off the brain, lead to coma, brain damage, death. And what I saw in some of the research I did for this presentation, it's pretty lethal. And too many people right now are mixing it into the drugs, and so you just don't know. As I said, a couple of people recently have passed away because of a fentanyl overdose. They're looking into several other stars who have passed away recently that reports haven't come back yet with their tox screens, and there's rumors that there could have been fentanyl involved with them also. Thanks, Kurt. Next slide. So that's fentanyl.
Mark, what was that article I sent you? You still have that?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, Lori sent me an article that is showing that fentanyl is actually very popular with younger kids and has been killing a lot of teenage kids nationwide, and that several toddlers have actually gotten into their mom's pills and have died because of the fentanyl that's in mom's illegal pills. Because it comes in pill form, it's the most common, very easily disguised. They've had several reports of children dying because of fentanyl overdoses. Popular with the teens because it does increase the high that you get with heroin, but still not a lot of education out there about how quickly you can overdose and die because of the drug. One other thing too, for teenagers, apparently fentanyl is being purchased over Snapchat with people that they may or may not even know. And so we need to be very careful with our teenagers, pre-teenagers, and being able to monitor social media, because they're apparently able to buy fentanyl and other drugs on social media now without the knowledge of their parents. And then parents are finding their kids dead because of these drugs. So it's out there, it's very potent, it's a killer, and it's something that we need to make sure we're monitoring very closely with those that we love.
Thanks, Rick. Scary stuff. Yeah. Time for something lighter. Will you stop screen shares, Kurt? All right, let's talk about meth. Meth, next slide. You'll see all the pictures of lovely methamphetamine. Still over 40% of our clients are using meth. Stimulant drug, that white bitter tasting powder pill. And it looks like glass fragments, shiny bluish white rocks. Powerfully, obviously highly addictive. I have people say they can't believe it, that they got so addicted to meth after using it. Next slide. So smoking, swallowing pills, snorting, injecting, like I said before about heroin, we're seeing a lot of combination of using heroin and methamphetamine together. So there's some similarities with methamphetamine and cocaine, where the drug starts and fades quickly. And so they need a lot of doses of methamphetamine, a lot of binging and crashing. What we'll see sometimes too with people that use meth, they also use marijuana. So they get really high, use marijuana to come down. And that's where we see a lot of cross addiction. So the doing the run, and then we also see people use methamphetamine so they don't eat and then they don't sleep. So they're up for several days. So psychosis tends to set in as well. We see a lot of people will come in, active drug, we call it drug addicted psychosis, trying to figure out what's been going on with them and what drugs they've really been using. Methamphetamine, you see what happens as well as with meth is because people are using so much, they don't take liquids into their body. And that's why you see the cracked lips, people with teeth problems, so many over the years. And then they also, because of the psychosis that tends to happen with not sleeping and using the drug constantly and not eating, we'll see where they see things and the psychotic things start to happen. I mean, you guys might want to jump in on this, Erica or Mark too. I've seen clients 30, 60, 90 days in still working on that psychosis of what they think is real and what they don't think is real. What Rick talked about, we're still waiting for them to clear. Next slide.
And sometimes they never like actually come out of it. They always see things.
Yeah, I tried looking into like what that looks like, because apparently the psychosis piece goes away, but it like triggers other things to where it becomes a different diagnosis at that point. And it can be really hard to kind of figure out how to best help people in that space. But
yeah, they said when, years ago, it would take anywhere like up to a year for people to totally clear. Then I heard it moved to 18 months. And so now I start wondering, because we talked about how much people are cutting other drugs in besides with meth, you never know, like what Rick said, you never know what people are actually taking, and they don't know what they're actually taking with what they're mixing everything with these days. So it's hard to say what's really going on. It's hard to say, is it all drug-induced psychosis? Is it their body clearing? Is it personality disordered? Is it trauma-based? Is it mental health? Is it all of the above? And sometimes we're picking all of the above because there's so many things going on. It messes with what we've talked about over the last other drugs about the chemical dopamine in the brain. So dopamine makes you motivate, it makes you feel good, it makes you do a lot of rewarding behaviors. And what happens is when you're introducing this drug, it messes with the neurons and the receptors. So we have our neurons firing back and forth, and then it overfires in your brain. And so then it's firing. And then what happens is when you quit taking a drug, and specifically methamphetamine, your receptors are messed up. And so they're trying to reset, and it takes a long time for that to happen. So what we tend to see happen a lot with clients that come into treatment is what's called anhedonia. And they really struggle feeling joy or feeling happiness. So we really try to push doing fun things a lot. We used to do a rec a lot more pre-COVID, but we saw a lot of that where they don't know how to have fun because their brain has been misfired for so long. And the longer they've used, the harder that becomes. We see a lot of problems with alcohol in older women where they just can't bounce back. It becomes really complicated. And so we're not just treating that, we're treating a multitude of other things. As far as that goes, Ange, I don't know. I think the more we introduce learning how to have fun, teaching about joy, it depends. Sometimes they're going to need some kind of mental health medications and evaluations to help get them back on track and help their brain reset. But I sometimes see people that go through all through res and finally into day treatment, they might wake up. And sometimes they just really struggle being happy again. It's really hard on the body, hard on learning how to experience joy, because they got the joy off that high, right? And then when they come back out of it on the other side of being sober, then they have to deal with their trauma. And then that becomes a whole nother complicated mess as well. Taking a lot of meds is that wakefulness, the decreased appetite, the faster breathing, the heartbeat stuff, the increased blood pressure, all of that puts a toll on the body too. And so we think about the clients too that really struggle with their health, right? All our almost all our clients have some kind of health issues because it's put such a toll on their body. I mean, if you're taking meth or cocaine or heroin and your heart's not working appropriately, eventually at some point you're going to have issues. And as you get older, that tends to be even harder. Those of us that have gotten older know how hard it is on our bodies, right? So introducing the drugs, and we have someone that's been using drugs for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we see those health effects happen as well. Next slide. Long-term effects, a lot of diseases such as HIV, hepatitis. People that use a stimulant tend to be very active. We see a lot of sexual activity as well with stimulation with drugs, and so not probably making the safest choices that can lead to a lot of other problems. And then it alters your judgment about your risky behaviors of what you're doing. And it can worsen the progression of all this stuff. We see extreme weight loss, but I'll have to tell you, I've seen lots of people come in that have meth as their drug of choice and they haven't lost weight. Where we used to see meth users have this stereotypical look, it's not the same anymore. And then a lot of dental problems, we used to call that meth mouth. A lot of sores from scratching and itching because the psychosis starts to happen. Some people say they see bugs crawling on their skin, creates a lot of anxiety. And then confusion, a lot of memory loss. They're not sleeping. That's why one of the things we really make a big deal here is coming to treatment, working on having meals at certain times of the day, working on having healthy meals, having a really solid structure. And why that's so important as well is really looking at getting back on track with having somewhat of a normal life, which they haven't had. We've seen a lot of violent behavior with meth. You've seen that in the news as well, where people are using meth. Think about it. You're using meth, you're stimulated for so long, you're not sleeping, you're seeing things, and then a lot of violent behavior can happen as well with that, which includes that paranoia and the hallucinations. So they think it's there, it's really not. Here are some pictures you can see of people, what happens to your teeth, skin, even the facial things that happen. We'll see people's mouths, as you see around the guy's mouth right here, but you'll see people's mouths, their whole dental structure will start to change because people are using drugs, including meth. It rots your teeth. And it rots your teeth because you're not putting liquids in your body. We need water, right? And people aren't using that appropriately, or they're not drinking for days. So they see that happen. And they're smoking cigarettes on top of that. And so it's a huge toll it puts on your mouth. Next slide. Changes in the brain's dopamine system we've been talking about, impaired verbal learning, coordination, severe changes in the brain happen over long-term use. Cell death can happen as well. And like I said, reverse after a year, maybe 18 months. Like I've seen changes where people aren't bouncing back like they used to. And so I'll just keep reiterating it worries me about what else is in the drugs these days. I mean, you think about what meth is made from, and it's scary stuff, right? That people are putting in their body. Next slide. Questions on meth? All right, time for a video. I was thinking I should have added a lot of different things with edibles as well. So a lot of ways that you look at smoking pot right now. Next slide. Doobies, like Michael likes to call them. Dried leaves, flowers, stems, seeds from the hemp plant. Most commonly used addictive drug after tobacco and alcohol. So most of our clients have used marijuana, widespread right now among young people. 11.8 million young adults used marijuana in the past in 2018. And so we see a huge bump in that in junior high, where junior high kids are using marijuana and alcohol. And because of the huge trend with vaping, THC has been included into that, where we see a lot of that as well. So legalization for marijuana use is growing as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that when I get to medical marijuana. Next slide. So smoking, hand-rolled cigarettes, you saw the joint, you saw the, God, I just lost the word. the joints and I lost it. It will come back in my brain. The bongs, the blunts, it's right there in front of me. So those are the cigars. That's what a blunt looks like. To avoid hailing smoke, people have used vaporizers as well, and a lot in the vaping units that we've seen as well. So clients cannot have vapes in here. We tell them to not bring their vapes. If they bring their vapes in, they go in the trash. We're not going to stash them for them. We're not going to hold them for them. And I'll tell you, some of those vapes are really expensive, but we're not keeping them because anything could be in those and it's not safe. You've also seen edibles come on the rise with medical marijuana. And so brownies, cookies, candy, people brew it in tea, a lot of things. Right now, though, THC use, marijuana use is illegal without medical marijuana card, and it has a hope it is illegal because we take a federal funding. So there's a lot of, we'll get it, a lot of discussion when we talk about medical marijuana that's came in the last 5 years. Next slide, short-term effects. So the chemical goes throughout the body and the brain, and when people eat it or drink it, acts on the brain cell receptors that react to the THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana, and they play a role in that brain development and function. And you can see all the different things that it affects in the slide with the brain right there. Altered sense of time, changes in mood, that impaired body movement, difficulty with thinking, problem solving, a lot of hallucinations that'll happen, delusions. I know people that used over the years, for years and years and years they used, and they would get irritable when people talk about there's no withdrawal symptoms in marijuana, but it's not accurate. There are withdrawal symptoms in marijuana, which looks like irritability and struggle with problem solving and thinking as well, with memory loss. Yeah, I know somebody, one of my friends, her kid's dad smoked marijuana for 20 years and he really struggled with that, functioning without smoking every day. So is it addictive? Absolutely, it's addictive because they couldn't. When we talk about addiction, it's about the inability to quit using a drug consistently. And that for people that use marijuana consistently, that's one of the issues. Next slide, please. So let's talk about medical marijuana for a minute. I added this today because it's become such a big hot topic as far as the last few years. Unfortunately, federal law prohibits any kind of use, which creates a huge problem for states. Federal law says, no, you can't have medical marijuana. However, states are allowing medical marijuana to happen and marijuana to be sold in some states. And because we take federal funding, it creates this big problem with trying to figure out how to work through this because a lot of people have medical marijuana cards. However, the feds and the states have never become aligned, which is a constant problem consistently. And so we have to look at how we deal with that. We can't have clients on medical marijuana. We can't have staff on medical marijuana because we accept the federal funding. So US federal law prohibits using the cannabis sativa and its derivative purposes. So this, but CBD, which you hear a lot about CBD oil, that comes from the hemp plant, but it's really under 0.3% of the THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana. So the cannabis sativa plant is what's used to ease symptoms, a lot of medical conditions, a lot, people use with medical marijuana. Can you get sick from secondhand smoke? I mean, I guess it depends on how much smoke you're around. A lot of people hotbox, if you're small and close spaces, getting other contact highs, yeah, that can happen just like being around regular tobacco as well. Next slide. There are a lot of research out there talking about medical marijuana and has a lot of possible health benefits. There's the whole argument, well, is it better to take medical marijuana versus taking oxycodone or Percocet, things like that can cause just as many problems. But really important is knowing what state regulations look like. And that's what we tell our clients all the time. Marijuana is illegal here. And so, well, I have a medical marijuana card. Well, we don't allow it in treatment centers. And right now, across the other treatment centers don't allow medical marijuana because of the federal funding issues. Medicaid's federally funded, and so we have to look at all that as well, of how we deal with that. And if you look at the states, a lot of them use medical marijuana for Alzheimer's, HIV, chronic pain, which I think severe and chronic pain probably are what people use medical marijuana a lot for. And that becomes an issue as well. Next slide. Is it safe? There's a lot of research out there trying to figure out the long-term effects of medical marijuana and long-term effects of versus using actually other types of pain medication. And so there's a lot of research going on that I was able to find. But there are side effects of medical marijuana as far as increased heart rate, dizziness, concentration, appetite. I mean, and there's always the potential for addiction, right? With any substance we put in our body, whether it's coffee, which has caffeine in it, you know, whether it's sugar, of course, everything has that possibility for addiction. And a lot of people use it because they want to be mind altered, but we also look at some people are using it because they have pain and their pain's legitimate. I don't want to take that away. But the problem also that we have is it's not because it's very unregulated versus something that's more regulated. It makes it very complicated to work with, you know, especially if you're doing a gummy, how much gummy should you make, how much THC is it, how much should you be taking on a daily basis? And I think until the states and the Fed get together, I don't know if that's it, when that, or if that will happen. I think it can become more regulated and probably looked at in a safer place to research it, but they've got to figure out how to get that in line. That also means because it's not federally legal, that places like Colorado, they can't have money obtained from marijuana places in a federal bank. And so you've seen these stories of all these cash places or these marijuana places that aren't medical marijuana hit because they have to store so much cash because they can't put it in the bank. Next slide. Go back. I wanted to share this article, Kurt, that I found. Yeah, if you
stop sharing.
yeah. I was going to pull up this article. So this site is the NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and talking about marijuana safe, effective as medicine. So it's really a great article that I was reading through. And one of the things I thought was really interesting is looking at marijuana, medical marijuana versus prescription and opioid use. So research about, because medical marijuana use has gone up, does that mean opioid use has gone down and people are using marijuana instead of opiates and it's safer? But the trend was, as you see in this article in 2019, they found the opioid overdose mortality rates were 21% lower than expected. And so they extended 2017, but then they found that the death rate was higher than expected. And so it's hard to say what that is right now. The data doesn't support that interpretation that because we have medical marijuana and cannabis, it's going to reduce opioid overdose. Is that the thought behind some of the systems? Sure, I believe that probably is, to look at medical marijuana being safer than opioids. And I don't know because I'm not a researcher. All I know is as we deal with drugs, because our clients tend to have a lot of addictive personality traits, then their ability to use something one time and use it as directed becomes really complicated without lots of treatment. That's why when Erica was talking about, we see people go back to alcohol because alcohol is legal. So they go to alcohol, they use alcohol, and they're like, oh, alcohol's fine, I can have a drink. Then they have a couple drinks, or they're out of the bar. Oh, I'll do a little bit of meth, I'll do a little bit of heroin. And then they're back. And not only are they addicted to heroin, they're still now addicted to alcohol. And so one of the things when I used to teach my DUI classes, that people that are alcoholics and addicts, they cannot consistently use low amounts of anything long-term. And it creates disruption in being able to function in our environments or in the community. And so that becomes, and not to say there aren't people out there that have become what we like to call that word functional addicts and alcoholics. There are some of those out there. It's not as black and white as that, but our clients, we tend to not see that. So I think what I like to say with anything as far as medical marijuana goes is doing research and really looking at effects. We do know there's a lot of research out there as far as how marijuana affects teenagers. because their brains are still developing and because brains don't fully develop until they're 25, especially the frontal lobe. Remember, the frontal lobe is the part of your brain that makes decision-making, impulse control, all those kind of parts. And because you're still developing that, people using drugs like that can really inhibit the full development as well. But I am going to put all this on the slides to talk about and to so that you can research, and we'll send this out as well, because I think it's really important to look at understanding all the research. So NIDA, if you want to go, well, let's stop share. Questions? Do you guys have questions at all? Okay, I'm gonna, Kurt, will you go
Yeah.
to the next slide?
I'm sorry?
Will you go back to the slides?
Sure.
Okay, next slide, Pass the questions.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Ange.
So unfortunately, my brother-in-law has been smoking marijuana in my mother-in-law's house, and I'm just curious how detrimental that is to her health, because it is legal in Vegas. We're not allowed to go visit or anything, but I feel like the situation is bad. She just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She can barely remember who we are, and we used to talk to her every Sunday. And I just wonder, like, if I should be calling and having like a home check over there with the marijuana, the amount of marijuana that he's been smoking.
I mean, you can always make that choice, Ange. I don't know what the laws in Nevada are. I don't know what those look like. So I don't. Yeah, it's always up to you what you decide to do.
I was just curious because I mean, I have a friend who's totally disabled and she takes marijuana for her pain, but she's like paraplegic and she has a medical card. But my brother-in-law really doesn't have any reason to do what he's doing. And we've tried and tried to get her out of that situation. We just can't. We can't access her. She's given him all the legal, basically signed papers, give him all legal choices to make choices for her.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it kind of freaks me out. I feel like I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I would make calls. You could always call Adult Protective Services to talk to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know the laws in Nevada, so I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
The hard part about when you talk about medical marijuana too and opiates is like there's a purpose, there's a purpose.
Yeah.
There,
well,
I think there's a purpose probably for medical marijuana as well, but I think it's regulated.
Oh, it's annoying. Oh, someone, I'm gonna mute myself.
Kelly, can you mute? Thank you.
The other thing I was going to add is you asked about salts, and bath salts we'll talk about in drug education too.
Okay, cool.
Topics.
Yeah, because Leanne talks about that being her DOC, and I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, bath salts. Look up bath salts and it'll tell you a lot of stuff. She used those for a lot of years. And we were just talking about long-term use. I don't care what it is. It has effects on your body. We see it all the time. If you're looking at resources, DEA.gov, when I put the slide together a year ago, this slideshow, I didn't realize how much information I would gain from there. And then at the drugabuse.gov, SAMHSA, NADAC, NIDA's on here as well. The other thing I was going to touch on was alcohol. And I was looking at some of the research of alcohol because we saw such a spike in it in the last few years. And we saw a spike during COVID because what happened during COVID, right? our country shut down. And because it shut down, it made it really complicated to get some of the drugs that people wanted. But what's the easiest drug to get? Alcohol. I remember seeing lines outside, even, you know, they weren't letting as many people in the liquor store, but huge spikes. And then because we saw huge spikes in alcohol, we saw huge spikes in abuse, child abuse, and domestic violence as well, because people were home so much and drinking as well. So a lot of increases I saw with the articles, those ones that under the slides for alcohol that we're talking about, the increase in alcohol use. I also wonder, I don't know, this is conjecture a lot, but I also wonder if people have started using alcohol because it might look safer on the outside. You know, when you're taking a drug, you have no idea what you're getting. When you're drinking alcohol, you know what alcohol looks like. It's very regulated.
Plus it's legal.
Plus it's legal, I agree. But I will say that if I look at all the drugs over the years, probably alcohol has been my toughest one to treat because it's legal and because it's socially acceptable and because our clients are like, oh, I'll just go have a drink, right? And so I think that's probably a tough one. And we see what happens with women as they get, I want to say 38, 40 years old, women that have been drinking, we see such a huge shift in what happens to them with their brain and their bodies. So it's such a toll it can place on people for alcohol as well. These last two ones with NIDA, marijuana, and then the Mayo Clinic, a lot of information on medical marijuana as well. And then American Addiction Center. So all those places have such great information, but I have to say that DEA.gov fact sheets and plus all the different names, because sometimes a client is talking about something and I have no idea what drug they're talking about because there's so many names. In fact, I might just screen share. I'll pop onto that. Hey, Kurt, can you stop screen share? To the DEA.gov options. How interesting it was because you can pull anything up. So let's say we want to do. Well, we'll just pop on bath salts for a minute and then you can go on and it'll have a huge facts publication sheet that'll pop open all the information on what it is, what it does. You can download it. And then the other thing I loved is the slate, the code words, talks about Flocka, talks about spice, all these other things. Some stuff I didn't even know, but the drug slang code words I really liked. That you could look at all they were and what they were. There's a whole booklet of it. And then every single drug in here, here's for meth, coke, crack, fentanyl, I mean, Apache, China Girl, Chinatown, China White, G, all this stuff. Very, very interesting. I mean, look at marijuana, all the stuff you can call it. I didn't know it was called catnip. Some of those rainy day women. Stuff I don't even know how they come up with. So it's all A to Z. So such a great, there's so many great resources out there that are free that you can do training on. That's I think is really, really interesting. Any questions, y'all? We covered a lot of information quickly, so I just want to make sure if anybody has questions.
Lori, I just want to let you know that the drugs of abuse you can get a resource guide. It's a 2020 edition. And I don't know if you can see this, but I got some of these on when I was in an internship, and it breaks down all of them, all of the drugs that are out there on the streets, and it has some of the names and it has all of the information about it. And these were free, and I think you can still order them from the DEA website. That's where I ordered like 2 cases of them.
We should have, do we have those, Rourke?
What?
I was asking Rourke if we have them. We might
They're
not have.
really informative.
Yeah, I don't know if we have those. We should order those. I know that we do. The other thing I was going to say is we teach drug education too to the clients, right? And so we have some amazing things that they put together for the curriculum. That's really educational.
Lori, I think we have a couple of copies of that, but not very many. And it's probably the one that Jenny has is probably more updated than the ones that we have. So we'll probably need to order some more.
Yeah.
They're really informative.
Yeah. It's hard to keep up on all the stuff these days. Definitely. And we want to try to be as informed as possible. Plus our clients are very informative. We can learn a lot from them.
And I just have one more question. When you're doing your looking up information on marijuana, did you notice that there's a huge distance between what marijuana used to be back in maybe the 70s or 80s and what marijuana is now? Like they have dabs and butters and all of those things. They actually have like marijuana houses, like there were meth houses in that, and that they're so the hybrids are so concentrated now. You know, they actually like cook them down to make dabs and butters and that. And that's so the concentrate is so high in that's causing, if kids are using that, causing them to go into psychosis and everything. Have you found?
Yeah, I mean, when I was 20 versus Kurt and I were talking about this, I can't imagine like the THC level when I was 20 versus the THC level now. I mean, it's ridiculous. And you're right, they've cooked it down to a science and what you're using. And yeah, the content, I think it used to be, God, I don't know if this is correct, 3-4%, 5%, and now it's almost what, 17-18% THC.
Yeah,
It's a huge, when I was looking at the percentages, it's this huge leap. So you're right. I mean, how can it not be more addictive with the THC content going up like that? So, and all the stuff they've come out with, right? It's phenomenal.
Mhm.
Definitely.
So, I mean, I think that when we think of marijuana, it's not always nowadays, it's not what we maybe like, well, two people could be talking about marijuana, but it may not be on the same page because of what's out there now and what somebody maybe particularly older like me were thinking of what marijuana used to be. It's a huge difference now.
Yeah, and I think too, putting it in vapes and all the kind of things they're doing, right? And edibles, somebody was talking about. Yeah, I mean, the stores they have. When we went to Oregon several years ago, I don't remember how long ago it was, anyway, and we were in Astoria and they had a medical marijuana shop. And so my kid and my nieces and nephews, we went in there. I'd never been in one. So I was like, I want to see what this looks like. And it was definitely like going into a store, a candy store where they have the jars and the lid, only it was all marijuana. It was so interesting to look at it. I should have taken pictures because it was so interesting to look at it. But the things you see in movies and stuff, that's just what it's like across the country. So yeah, I think our clients are smart about putting stuff in pens, putting stuff in all kinds of things. And so we have to figure out how we stay on top of technology as well to make sure we're not having that place stuff in here. But bottom line, they're always going to be smarter than us always. Every time I think we figure something out, the next thing I know, there's some kind of meth in a pen, in a gel pen. I was like, holy crap, I wouldn't even have noticed that, right? So thanks, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
Any other feedback, stuff you guys have? Questions? By no means did I cover everything, or did we cover everything? There's just so much information out there, but lots of good links if you want to understand stuff.
Lori, I just looked it up on the DEA website and they have the new version, the Drugs of Abuse 2022,
Oh, yeah.
with a downloadable copy for anyone that wants to download it and print it.
Oh, good. Yeah. It's a good idea. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Erica. Thanks, Rourke. Congratulations, staff of the month. Welcome to all the new staff. Thanks for everybody, since we haven't seen you all since November in the party, but I appreciate everybody participating and showing up and being here.
Since we're ending a few minutes early, now would be a great time to take your acknowledgement quiz, please. Sorry that I keep going over and over that, but I need to see if this new way of doing it is going to work. So
where is it, Kurt? I missed it.
I put it in the chat, but I'll email it. I'll email it to everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
Like, it's the
Thank
link,
you.
right?
I'll email you the link right now. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Kurt, I just got on it and looks like it's working.
Okay, all right. I hope this works, you guys. So thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Lori.
Bye.
Good info. Bye.